o'clock. We'll open the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk Cody, would you do a roll call of the board, please?
Supervisor Milkey?
Here.
Treasurer Rogers?
Here.
Trustee Brown?
Here.
Trustee Lannon?
Here.
Trustee Lay?
Here.
Trustee Theron? Are you here?
Oh, here.
Clerk Cody here.
Where are we getting the echo from? Oh, is it?
Here, but I don't know why, because I'm on mute.
You're on mute, but turn your volume down.
It is turned
Oh,
down.
it is?
and about.
Okay, thank you for doing the roll call. The echo's a little weird. We have an agenda in front of us. I'm happy to entertain any motions. If there's any need for additions.
Support.
Motion by Rogers, support by Cody to approve the agenda as presented. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion to approve the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Agenda is approved unanimously. We have no presentations nor public hearings tonight. So with that, we'll open up public comment. Public comment is restricted to 3 minutes regarding issues on this agenda. If you choose to address the public, please state your name and address for the record. And with that, we'll open up public comment at 7:02 p.m. Welcome back.
Yeah, thank you. My fourth meeting. I'm Sandy Hellis, 580 South Shepherd Road, Mount Pleasant, Michigan. I'm Jessica Canderas' aunt. Don't think they're going to make it tonight. Was hoping they could. We're here to try and get their property rezoned from light industrial to residential, so that they can keep their chickens and ducks and geese. Plus the master plan, I think it's called, will have more of a straight line if their little chunk of property is moved into residential and out of the industrial. For those of you who weren't at the last Board of Trustees meeting, they got their birds a couple of years ago. They didn't know that they weren't supposed to have them. When they found out from Peter that they weren't supposed to have them, we've come to, well, like I say, this is the fourth meeting I've been here, and they've been here to all the others. They've been going through the planning committee and so on, trying to get the property rezoned, and so that they could keep them. They've got 3 kids. The kids love the birds also. I feel like it helps the kids learn responsibility by taking care of them. They're eating the eggs. They're processing some of the birds. It's just a nice hobby for the whole family. I just wanted to say there was some comments about the neighbors. They did go and talk to their northern neighbor. I think it was last week, and they had a nice conversation with him. And he actually invited them to have a cookout with them when the weather gets better. So I think they got that neighbor convinced that, okay, chickens are okay, and they're going to work together on it. So I just wanted to let all of you know that. I did talk to Peter today and told him that. I did get your message that you called back, but I was actually talking to Peter at the time you called. And then I got your voice message, so I didn't bother calling you back. But I did tell Peter that, so that's a good sign. So just wanted to let you all know that. I hope that the property can be rezoned for the family, and because this is just a nice hobby for them. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, and Peter had mentioned that Ken and Jean, Jessica's parents, he mentioned that there was some comments whether they could come to the meeting tonight, because they're still owners. they're going through a divorce, and so the property isn't quite, all the paperwork isn't, Ts aren't crossed, Is dotted, but it's almost done, and then the property will be put into Jessica and her husband's names. So Ken, who is Jessica's father, is here tonight, so I just wanted him to say a few words just so you will know. He and Jean definitely agreed that they want the property rezoned. So this is Ken, Jessica's dad.
Hi, I'm officially the owner, but I'm not the owner. But it was left to me in the divorce, and she kept the original house. We just haven't got the title over yet, but it will be.
Would you just also state your address for the record too, please?
My home address?
Yes.
2190 Yats Drive, Y-A-T-S, Mount Pleasant.
Thank you.
Anything else you want to know?
Oh, last name for the record too, please?
Candaris. Same
Candaris.
as Jesse's.
I knew that, but I think we needed it spoken, so
Okay.
thank you very much.
That it?
Yes.
Awesome.
Thank you. I'm really glad you came in.
I'm sorry.
I'm really glad you came in. Thank you.
Okay.
Do you have anybody online by chance?
No, there's no one online.
Let the record show that no one's participating online. And public comment is still open if somebody else would like to get up. Seeing no one else coming forward at this time, we'll close public comment at 7:07 p.m. That brings us to item 9 on the agenda, reports, boards, and comments. Current list of boards and commissions, appointments as needed. I have some notes for this. Just a note, I'm going to kind of go through a lot of the boards, but the Planning Commission has 3 spots coming up in February. We have the roughly 3 seats every 3 years, right? So there's a rotation on that board. But there's 3 seats coming up. I am not sure of it, but 2 of those are relatively new appointments that were made, just in the last 6 months or less. I would anticipate, can you give me any information on this, to anticipate that they would likely reapply?
I would expect it.
Okay, and then one of the members is going to be retiring, but did give indication that if we weren't able to fill the seat in the time at the end of his term, that he would serve longer till we got someone. I certainly don't want to take advantage of that, so it looks like it will at least have the 1 planning commission seat to fill in for February. Board of Review, the term ends, it's a 2-year term, ends at the end of this calendar year. It's a 2-year term. There are 3 spots, of which I'm sitting on as a non-voting member secretary, but we have 3 applications. Being that we're getting towards the end of the year, I would highly recommend, if people are willing to make some nominations for the Board of Review, I'd be happy to.
You said we do have applications?
We have 3 applications
Good.
for Board of Review, who are the current members, in fact.
Okay.
But their terms are up. Now, they don't meet again till March, so there is time in a sense. But I know they want to get into training if they're reappointed, and I believe the training's in January.
I'll make a motion.
To what?
Go ahead.
I just say the training's February 19th for Board of Review.
There is it the
That's the MTA
local one? Because there's also training, there's a few other places,
Okay.
but there is January one as well.
Okay.
Trustee Brown, were you going to say something?
I was gonna make a motion to
Okay.
appoint Janet Corbin for Board of Review. And I'm gonna need some help with dates on term endings and beginnings.
Going off, well, let me look, so I know. It's going to be 2 years from the date, so it'll be 12/31/2026.
12/31 of 2026,
Correct.
term ending.
Term ending.
Good enough?
Support.
Motion by Brown, support by Cody to appoint Ms. Corbin to the Board of Review, term ending 12/31/2026. Any comments? I'll just say, since I'm on the Board of Review, I first met her in the July meeting. Really enjoyed her. She was nominated chair for the rest of this term in the December meeting. She knows parliamentary procedures, so she was able to run the meeting perfectly well. I'm really happy with her engagement.
Excellent.
Any other comments? We have a motion on the floor to nominate Corbin to the Board of Review. All in favor of that, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Corbin is appointed.
And move to, move to what?
Appoint or
Appoint.
nominate.
Move to appoint Sergeant Chowdhury for another term ending 12/31/26. The Board of Review.
Support.
Motion by Rogers, support by Brown. Any comments?
He's served and he's back to serve, so.
Yeah. Dr. Chowdhury
That's
probably is
great.
going to have the most experience on the board,
Yep.
because I think this is probably his second full term.
Okay.
The third coming
Right.
up if we appoint him.
Yep.
Any other comments?
Yeah, Dr. Chowdhury's been committed to being an active member on various committees here at the township, and pleased to see him apply to continue on the Board of Review.
Awesome.
I have no comment.
Okay, all in favor of the motion to appoint Dr. Chowdhury to the Board of Review, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Passes unanimously.
Motion to appoint Jacob Trudell Lozano
Lozano?
to Board of Review
Support.
with the expiration date, same, 12/31/26.
Support.
Motion by Cody, support by Therian. Any comments? Anybody know Mr. Lozano?
No, I met with him, I spoke with him a little
Yeah.
bit, and he seemed like anyone.
I met him for the first time at the Board of Review meeting. He was very engaged. I think it took him about 3 minutes to get his feet wet and get comfortable in his chair, and then I was really pleased with his engagement and performance, so I'm excited he's willing to serve. Seeing no other comments, all in favor of appointing Trudell Lozano to the Board of Review, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. ZBA, we have a seat. I want to make sure my notes are correct on this. Ending, well, technically 2 seats ending at the end of this year. And then Eric Luce being one of those is not re-upping. I believe he's actually moving out of the township. And I know Dave Coyne serves on the EDA. Brian Clark has been, and David are both the alternates on that currently. My preference, of course, as always, is to put someone on there that's not serving on other boards if possible. But I'm happy to accept nominations for the 5th spot and the alternate 1 if someone's so inclined.
I'd make a motion to nominate Brian Clark to the 5th spot with an expiration date 12/31/2027.
Support.
Motion by Lannon, support by Brown.
Would it be 29?
That's a 3-year term, so it would be 27, right? Is that what you said?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, 20,
His is ending 26.
28.
No, that's for the
20
5th
27.
position.
Well, that goes with, the expiration goes with Eric.
No, I'm nominating them for the 5th.
Yeah, that's Eric's
Position.
spot, but Eric's spot is up at the end of this year.
Oh, it's not with the person? Oh, okay.
Yeah, at least that's what I'm showing on my paperwork.
I thought if Brian's already on and he's doing 3 more years,
Oh, no.
oh, okay. Good.
We're filling in more permanent spot, was the motion you had, I believe.
Okay.
I understand your question. Thank you for the
Yep.
clarification. We have a motion by Landon with support by Brown, correct?
Correct.
Discussion? I don't know Mr. Clark real well. I've talked to him a few times. I did encourage him to reapply, and he was thrilled for the opportunity.
Appreciate his support to be on the board.
Any other discussion? All in favor of nominating Mr. Clark to the ZBA, term ending end of the year 2027, you said? 28, 27.
27.
Oh, thank you.
It's a 3-year term.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Mr. Clark is appointed unanimously.
I'd also make a motion to nominate David Coyne to the alternate 1 position with the term expiring 12/31/2027.
Support.
Motion by Landon, support by Brown. Comments?
Yeah, well, David Coyne, come on. Do we need to comment on that? I mean, what a joy to have him on our boards and to support the community the way he does.
Agreed. I've really enjoyed him on the EDA board. I can't speak regarding the ZBA because I've not served with him on that capacity, but he's been a great EDA member.
I did on the ZBA, and it was
That's right, for the
excellent.
short time that you were
For a
on.
short time with him, and yeah, it was a pleasure serving with him.
Any other comments? All in favor of the motion to appoint Mr. Coyne to the ZBA, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Those are the only ones I'm aware of on that. Notes on the EDA. We have 2 terms coming up in February. Rick Bars and Jeff Sweet. I've not had a chance to talk to either of them, but I will make sure that I reach out to them. Just to note, we have an open CRC seat. And I believe that's all we have as far as appointments to boards. At least that's what I could find going through the paperwork, unless somebody has anything else. I'm going to segue briefly. This still has to do with appointments. At our last meeting, we talked about liaison roles per the policy governance, and doing that in our first meeting in January. So I thought I'd arm you with some additional information, because I didn't have this last time. Just as a reminder, Planning Commissioner, we appointed Trustee Thering to that at the last meeting. Myself to EDA and Board of Review. But we have intergovernmental, and I believe their first meeting will be in January. And then we have the Election Commission. And then those are the required ones, the shall be appointed liaisons. The optional ones in the policy governance are the Road Commission, the County Commission, the City Commission, MMDC, and Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribe. We did appoint Manager Stuhldreyer to the MMDC. That's not necessarily putting a board liaison, but it's a township liaison. So what I wanted to make sure everybody's armed with is Planning Commission meets the 3rd Tuesday at 7. So I'm going to give you schedules of these boards. And if anybody wants to chime in and describe what those boards do, that would be helpful. Planning Commission, 3rd Tuesdays at 7. Intergovernmental typically meets quarterly. Usually that's during the day. Since COVID, that has been a Zoom meeting. I kind of wish we'd go back to meeting in person. But it'd be nice to have 2 individuals for that. We don't have to, but it would be nice. So why I mentioned that one is if you have a 8 to 5 or 9 to 5 kind of job, that might not be the best one to be thinking of serving on. But if you have other times available. Election Commission, I was hoping you might just briefly describe, and as far as requirements time-wise and what they do.
So you'd meet before each election, go to the public accuracy testing, test out the machines, make sure all the ballots are worded properly, everything's, spelled correctly on everything, the machines are running correctly, they'd sign, the tabulator tape after we run everything testing-wise through. We'd have our meetings before each election again. For the approval of the election inspectors, the list, make sure it's balanced out properly with Republicans, Democrats for each precinct. That's pretty much the only times we really meet. And then if we have like, moving the jurisdictions or something for like, the voting precincts, if we move that, we'd have to meet for that, but that's been moved recently. So I get, what is it, about 3 weeks before each election, we'd meet. They give me a date. Normally it's either Tuesday or Thursday. I'm not sure the time. It's whenever they can do the testing of the machines. We have election source coming for that.
And that can be during the day as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but normally it takes about an hour.
And we need two
Two.
for that. Thank you. County Road Commission, I tried to figure out their schedule. They usually meet once a month at 9 a.m. and sometimes it's it's almost always on Thursdays, but sometimes it's the second Thursday of the month, sometimes it's the third or fourth. It's weird. I could not find a pattern, and I couldn't find documentation as to when they meet, which is odd to me. But in any event, they typically meet on a Thursday morning at 9 a.m. sometime during the month. So that's another 9 to 5 kind of potential conflict. We do, just for information, we do have staff that also attends that as well. So we do have representation there. The County Commission, that's twice a month. That is first and third Tuesdays at 5 p.m. for the work sessions, and then the actual meeting, which is where they primarily take votes on what they did in the work session, is at 7. So that's twice a month. It's the 5 o'clock is where they do most of their real work, just not the voting. City Commission, second and fourth Monday, 7 p.m. Anybody have questions about any of these? Because my hope is that at the January 8th meeting here, that we have the opportunity then to work out who's going to represent, be a liaison for what. We all good?
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for entertaining me on that. December monthly activity report, I think I saw that came in late this afternoon. I haven't had a chance to read it. If someone did and they have questions or comments, now's the time. Seeing none, Planning Commission annual reports in your packet. Are you wanting to present this in any way?
No, I'm certainly available to answer questions.
Okay, I read through it. Are there questions or comments on the annual report?
No, I have no.
Oh, self-explanatory, thank you.
So my only comment on that was to show the activity that actually goes on in the Planning Commission. There's quite a few rezones, ordinance amendments, minor site plans and things. It really brought to light there's quite a bit of activity going on in the Planning Commission, and just wanted to thank Chairman Phil Squatrito and the whole Planning Commission for the work they do.
Yeah, they have a heavy lift board, for sure. And thank you, Trustee Thering, for all your work in the last few years on that. That brings us to item 9D on the agenda, Planning Commission, EDA, and ZBA updates by our Community and Economic Development Director, Mr. Nanny.
Well, thank you. This is could be a very short update. We did not have a zoning board of appeals meeting in December. We had no agenda items for that. The EDA board also did not meet in December. That meeting was canceled by the chair. As I understand, there was concern about quorum being able to be present. The Planning Commission did meet yesterday evening. They had one item on their agenda, and that was site plan approval for the expansion of our water plant down south of Isabella Road. The size of the expansion was sufficient to require site plan approval. And so that did come before them last night. It was treated as what's called a combined preliminary and final site plan, where they take the two steps and put them together in one. They had dealt with all the outside agency permits beforehand. The plan was approved, and temporary relief from construction of the sidewalk that's otherwise required by our sidewalk ordinance was also granted as part of that. The area where our water plant is not a high priority area for sidewalks. It's really kind of a dead end there, and it's a section that very unlikely to be developed in the future. So the Planning Commission did grant that relief. So that is the sum total of the activity for the Planning Commission, and with that, I'm happy to answer questions we have.
I have a comment from watching the planning commission meeting. One, I found it, I'm trying to think of the right adjective here, enlightening or pleasing. It was Commissioner Ulver's comments that, or question to you, I think it was in the meeting, does the township as the applicant have to follow the same rules as everybody else? And the response was, in this case, we probably don't have to, I'm paraphrasing, probably don't have to because it's a public need, but we're choosing to make sure that we follow the same process that any other applicant goes through. So that's nice. And his response to that was, I think, well, that's refreshing. Secondly, and I don't know that I saw the outcome, but the sidewalk discussion, because of the safety issue that I think really came out of 9/11, which is making sure that the water plant, the wells, et cetera, are all protected. What ended up happening with that?
Right. So this was a question primarily about the connector sidewalk going from what would have been a public sidewalk along Isabel Road going up to the building. The Planning Commission, as part of their motion, adopted a finding that section was not appropriate to be included on the plan because of those state requirements.
It was a good meeting. Thank you. Any other questions or comments for the director?
Thanks, Rick.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That brings us to board member reports. Once we make the liaison appointments, these will become more interesting too. Board member reports, let's see, I'll start with Trustee Thering, which we just got half the report.
I have nothing more to add. Mr. Nanny took care of it.
Clerk Cody? Trustee Brown?
I did not make the Mount Pleasant City Commission meeting, but Trustee Lannon did, and we connected, and he was able to give the report for me today.
Good segue to him, right?
Thank you.
Trustee Lannon?
Yes, so I did have an opportunity on Jeff's behalf to attend the regular meeting of the Mount Pleasant City Commission, which took place Monday, December 9th. And it was an interesting meeting, to say the least. There was a full house, so there was a thing or two on the agenda that brought interest to the community. Right out of the gate, they were able to introduce a couple of new employees to the city. The first being a grant coordinator that they've hired recently, whose name is Lauren Baker. And the next fella, Chase Nelson, was hired as a paid-on-call firefighter. So that's beefing up our ranks a little bit as far as the numbers in the paid-on-call fire ranks. They did have a public input on agenda items. There was a handful of people that spoke at that time, and the topic was regarding a proposed rezone of 5 parcels at the southwest corner of Crawford Road and Broomfield Road, which if you probably went to the western edge of that, it would probably butt up to township property or come very close to it. And then getting into the public hearing, again, it was on a rezone, and it was rezoning 5 parcels that were zoned planned residential development. And the idea was to move 3 of them to general urban character district, with 2 of those having residential use restrictions. One of them didn't have the restriction. Also moving part of that zoning to a special district university. And also the last district would have been to rezone to what's called civic zone. A lot of conversation regarding that. I believe it's about 154 acres of property, those 5 parcels. And a lot of the discussion was behind 31 acres of that a group was trying to establish a Christian school on a portion of that property. And a lot of discussion between people's thoughts on the pros and cons. Ultimately, the rezone was voted down 4-3. Also, they passed their 2025 operating budget with a millage set at 16.25 mils. Along with that was approval of their amended rates, fees, and charges that support that operating budget. And one thing of note to me on that was water services are going to experience a 7% increase. And the final point of interest was the board was having conversation in regards to a process design for a evaluation of the city manager. And that pretty much concluded the meeting.
Thank you, Trustee Lannon.
You're-
That's thorough. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Interesting meeting. All good? Trustee Lay? Treasurer Rogers?
Well, progress and learning more what's going on, but no, I've got nothing. Everything's running smoothly.
Good. Taxes are out and
Taxes are out. A few didn't get delivered with, address issues, so we're fixing that. Zoning Board of Review, December Board of Review, created some adjusted tax bills that are getting mailed tomorrow. So yeah, we're working through all the, dialing everything in so it's where it's supposed to be.
great segue if you're done.
Yep, that's it.
Board of Review met, largely it's just qualified error corrections, meaning clerical essentially, of some sort. And I think there were 23 properties, if I
Yes.
remember right, that were adjusted, so. And that's really part of a carryover of catching up now that we have a full-time assessor in-house, and that will continue to lessen, I would think, the numbers. As Director Nanny mentioned, no EDA in December, but I thought I'd use this opportunity because I didn't know where else to put it. In our last meeting, we discussed about having a separate agenda item to discuss budget for the new members, board members. And it was decided at that time that the new board members would reach out with our manager and work through any questions, that kind of stuff. So I just want to ask if that's worked okay.
I went through it with Mark and makes sense. Went through it all, explained everything.
That was a good way to go through it? No issues from the, okay, perfect. That moves us on to item 10 on the agenda, consent agenda. I'll just point out one thing that's not highly unusual, but different than we normally have, and that's the franchise agreement, but I'm happy to entertain any motions.
Motion to approve.
Support.
Motion by Cody, support by Thering, to approve the consent agenda as presented. Discussion? Warrants?
Yes, I took a look at the warrants and didn't find anything that I could question. It all looked good.
I will note, in the minutes, there was one minor correction in the roll call. So what's in your packet, there was a letter G missing from Treasurer Rogers' name in the roll call. That's been corrected in the online, and I believe in what is we would be signing tonight is approved minutes, assuming we approve it. Did I state that accurately? Any other comments? All in favor of consent agenda being approved, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Consent agenda passes unanimously. That brings us to new business. Item 11A, this is second reading, potential adoption of township-initiated rezoning of Lot 943 South Isabella Road from light industrial 1 to rural residential 1. Mr. Stuhldreher, would you like to introduce anything on this?
Just briefly, thank you. This item was up before you for consideration or introduction and first reading at your last meeting. You approved that, so it is here in front of you tonight. The Planning Commission, they met on this item on September 17th. All the notices that are required to be made, whether it's in mailing or posting or webs or newspapers or what have you, including mailings to surrounding property owners, have all occurred. I guess the September meeting, the Planning Commission was initially discussing the item. They had a public hearing and a regular meeting on October 15th. They recommended unanimously that the Board of Trustees approve this amendment. It's been through the county Planning Commission as required. And then, as I mentioned, at your November 26th meeting, this board introduced and conducted a first reading. Following that, there were certain posting and notification requirements. All of those have been made. This is a consideration to rezone the property from light industrial L1 to R1, which is rural residential. And then my final comment on this, because I think there's been a fair amount of discussion, I'm not going to go through all the background, is I think I've heard in both the Planning Commission meeting and this Board of Trustee meeting from last month, there might be a misconception. The administration has not conducted or initiated any blight enforcement action. What we are enforcing and have been enforcing is a land use issue, a zoning issue, not blight. The use of the property as it relates to the allowed uses for the particular zone that it sits in. I know there's been pictures distributed and looked at, and sometimes that blight comment has gotten some wind, so to speak, but we have not done anything, and we've not initiated anything as it relates to a blight enforcement action. So with that clarification, just turn it back to you. We're happy to answer any questions any of you may have. We have Mr. Nanny in the audience tonight, and then the property owners and current tenants, and sounds like future owners in the audience.
So I'll open up to any questions that anybody has for those that the manager just listed.
No. I'll make a motion to conduct the second reading for the PREZ 24-01 request to rezone the 50.53 acre lot at 943 South Isabella Road. PID 14-001-30-004-01 on the east side of the South Isabella Road of East River Road in the southwest quarter of Section 1 from I-1 Light Industrial District to R1 Rural Residential District, and to adopt the amendatory ordinance as ordinance number 24-06.
Support.
Motion by Cody, support by Lannon. Discussion?
Yes, some of the questions that I had, I believe, were answered during public comment. And I did ask staff some questions that were very helpful, so I appreciate their time. One of the things that really, and I understand the question is a zoning question, But we are, at the end of the day, the buck stops with the board if something isn't right, no matter what the question is. What stuck with me was a comment by one of our planning commissioners the day that we unanimously approved the zoning request. And that was that while this is a zoning issue, the original reason for bringing it to the commission was due to unresolved nuisance issues. Now, that's another question I think that's been answered. I believe Sandy, when she came forward and said that the neighbors had gone over and, did you say today or a few days ago?
Jessica went over and talked to the
Trying to
northern
remember,
neighbor.
sorry, it was Saturday or Sunday.
Saturday. And talked to them about that, and you felt that was a good conversation, and were both of you able to explain each other's concerns, or?
Well, I just asked him if there's been any issues or anything we could do, and he mentioned about, maybe even moving the birds back more just for the smell, and he said that might be something we might be able to do, and he said, yeah, we'll get together this summer and get to know each other.
So that's something you would consider moving them back a little bit farther, or even do, just, if that was you would probably want that as well. Not wanting to take away the chickens or the birds away, but, so that's something that's, I think, very helpful, a question that was asked.
Would they already move that?
They were moved in the middle and then moved back to the side. Yeah. They've been moved a few times.
So I believe the questions that I did have, based on your comments and some of the guidance from staff, have I like that you went over and spoke with them. I think that's fantastic. So I really appreciate you doing that, and I hope that you continue to do that as time goes by. So thank you.
I'll jump in. Oh, sorry. Do you
No,
wanna
please
go?
go.
I've really struggled with this. Prior to the planning commission meeting in which you recommended this to the board of trustees, I got contacted by one of the neighbors, went out, looked at the property, actually looked at several properties while I was there, with permission of the property owners, and I got this feeling that the rezone was initiated because of a complaint. And while our documents say it's township initiated, it also says it was initiated by a request of the residents at that location to the planning commission to consider a rezone. And so as I've worked through all this and talking with the neighbors and listening, and I really appreciate the comments and coming forward, I'm still struggling with it. And I think it came down over the last few days for me that maybe it's what I'm struggling with is that we have a half-acre lot that if we were to approve this as rezoning, they could have unlimited cattle there. They could have unlimited whatever, essentially given all rights as agriculture. And I began to think that that didn't make a lot of sense to me when they're abutting residential homes. And so I began to question myself, is there a better solution than a rezone for the purpose of allowing a family to continue to raise their chickens, right? My fear is, and I'm going to play both sides of this, my fear is that by allowing the rezone, we're condoning unlimited agricultural animals. And with that comes what we all know. But in the same sense, by not rezoning it, leaving it as I-1, we're also condoning 100% what is allowed in I-1,
Yeah.
right? I mean, there's both sides to this. And so, to me, none of this felt like the right solution is what I'm trying to get at. And I really wonder, is it worth asking the planning commission to look at the R1 and impose some type of common sense restrictions that says, I'm just gonna speculate here. For a quarter acre lot,
Right.
you're allowed a certain amount. For a half acre, you're allowed a certain amount, and so on. Where it makes sense to the property itself and can be then also protecting the neighbors. And that's kind of where I've settled on this. So I can't support the motion, and if I vote it down, that's why. It's not that I want to stop this family from having their chickens. I think it's great their kids are involved. But I also want to protect the neighbors. And the only way I've been able to come up with, and I'm open to other ideas, to do this is to ask the planning commission, put this on pause, ask the planning commission to look at this and see, is there something that makes sense that would apply across the township? And I don't know the answer, if that's a good solution. I'm not a planning commissioner anymore, but that's where my thoughts are at.
I agree. That's the thing that was holding me back was the restrictions.
I don't think we need to restrict it right now. I think the planning commission can look at that at, like, one of their next future meetings and put something on it, but I still think it should be an R1 because that's the master plan says. I'm sorry, I'm getting sick, so it's hard to talk.
I'm sorry.
Well, hey, I'm here, right? But, so, look what they can have right now. I mean, they can put, an auto place right there? I mean, hey, right now, they can do a lot worse than a few chickens, I'm just saying. I'm not saying them as a people, I'm just saying that property, or a property, can do a lot more than that. And stuff that smells probably way worse than chickens. I've had chickens, so, they don't bother me. But I lived in the country when I had a bunch of chickens, but I don't know. I'm just saying, it's a master plan, says it should be an R1. We should just coincide with master plan like we did. The planning commission said to support it. I'm with approval.
Trustee Therian?
In talking with staff yesterday, if I understood properly, if they would all of a sudden put 50 chickens and 20 geese and 10 ducks, there could potentially be an issue, that we wouldn't even have to address. I mean, you could call animal control, or I don't think I'm saying that right, but because that's inhumane. That would be kind of inhumane to put that much livestock in that small of a space. Does that am I saying
They
that?
wouldn't survive if you did that.
I'm sorry?
You really can't.
And I don't want to assume that that's what's going to happen. I don't think that's what's going to happen. They've not indicated that's anything that's going to happen. I really like the idea that they had a conversation with a neighbor, got to express something that if I was that neighbor, can we just put them more towards the back for the smell and the waste and the, I think that's great communication, and I think if they follow through with that, that's even better. And if by chance, when I say they, it could be anybody. This could be any property anywhere that's getting rezoned. If that's something that would happen, that is something that could be done without having to have anything brought before a planning commission to look at. I do think someday, and maybe today's the day, but someday that might be not a bad idea for the planning commission to look at. I don't know that this is necessarily the situation. It's such a small property, I don't know how many, I don't know how many animals, I mean, do you know about how many birds you have right now?
5 geese,
I'm trying to think too.
about 8 ducks, and I think we're down to maybe, is it more than 10 chickens? I don't even think so.
We have
10
2 separate pens. We
10
have-
chickens and 8 ducks
Yeah.
in pens?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know. I'm just throwing things out there of conversations that I had, if I understood them correctly, so. I'm still a little bit of a struggling pattern, but I think it's very helpful that they've had a conversation with the neighbor and they got to express themselves, so.
Trustee Lannon?
So what we have in front of us, I think, is a perfect school example for a board to tackle if you're in a training session. There's so many different points of light coming from the sense that we are talking about a zoning issue, a rezoning in the light industrial next to a rural residential R1, which creates an interface from one zone to another zone, and so it brings in the thought of buffering, transitions. Nuisances come up in the sense that two-edged sword, say you're that first R1 property and you're living on your nice quiet country plot of land, and right next to it the next 4 properties are light industrial, which could entail some of the light industrial businesses that appear would be like furniture making. And if you ever heard taking rough cut wood and running it through planers and saws and such to build furniture, one might think that's a nuisance. Probably more so in summertime when your doors are open and sound travels and sawdust is flying. It could be a vehicle repair garage in that light industrial, probably. Commercial laundry operations. It could be a fence company, which there's a lot of hammer and a steel and welding that goes on. So that's things on the light industrial zone, which this piece of property currently is in. So those are approved uses, basically. And going to the point that this was maybe not the catalyst to, but was brought forward in a unanimous vote by the Planning Commission to look at what we have there. Has to do with creating some buffers, straightening out some lines, matching future maps, and also this property happens to be, again, just outside of the growth boundary map as well. And so it's a perfect textbook example of how do we look at what this board's trying to accomplish. Community well-being, health, safety, commerce, progress through diversities of various sorts. So you can really twist yourself up in a lot of points of light and where the ballast kind of weighs in. There have been conversation that has been brought forward by some neighbors coming from both zoned types of properties. And not having survey lines with me, but one property line to this particular property we're talking about, there's fairly large, what I'll call pole buildings that appear to be right on the property line because the fence goes right to the back corner of them. So you get into proximity setbacks probably aren't meeting what would be today's standard for setbacks and things. And so in that particular light industry, there's already some large structures that could become more than, I don't know if they're storage structures, but they could become manufacturing plants of sorts and things. So a lot of issues, but at hand, as James said, we've learned of some conversation. Hopefully that's from neighbors and looking at being neighborly. But in front of us is a planning commission request for a rezone that matches up with some future land maps that are in place, and that's the biggest part of the picture I can think of right now, how to summarize everything. And so that's what we have in front of us to vote on. And I think I could support the planning commission's recommendation to us.
I can see both sides of this because I agree with you. Like, we need to have some sort of common sense rules about livestock husbandry and these kind of situations, but I can also understand that that little nibbled out section of R1 versus I1 doesn't make a lot of sense from, I mean, I would support what the planning commission is suggesting, but I do think we need to address, since we do seem to have a lot of issues with livestock being kept in not zoned for livestock areas, this is something that we do need to address in the future because it's going to continue happening. Because we kind of do walk this fine line of being a rural community as well as a urban community. So you've got those weird wiggle room areas, and we need to have good guidelines that are easy to understand so we don't end up in these kind of situations in the future.
Any other comments? I'm just gonna make one more, I think one more. I appreciate your comments, Clerk Cody, but I purposely lifted up that by not rezoning and being an I1, I understand what that means also. But my fear is if we approve it, even if we try to address, for lack of a better term, common sense numbers, whatever that means as far as animal husbandry, to use your words. Grandfathering, I'm assuming, would come into play. So, Mr. Stuhldreher, do you know if you change zoning on like an R1 in this case, then everybody that has an R1 now would be grandfathered in unless it was done via police powers, correct?
I'll let Mr. Nandy address that.
So the question is, if the property is rezoned to R1 now, you're asking, would any future zoning regulations apply to that?
Correct.
Activity? So, to answer the question, if the property is owned R1, the R1 district allows the ordinance versus customary agricultural operations. So it would be treated as that, as essentially a small farm for that purpose. So yes, if any standards were put in place later in the zoning ordinance, I think there would be a strong suggestion that the activity would be legally non-conforming with those standards. If they were, I mean, that's one thing to keep in mind, is the number of animals that were described is not a lot, potentially for the size of the lot. And so it may be that any ordinance standard that came in, they would meet that standard. In that case, they would be required to follow it from then
let me paraphrase. What I just heard was, yes, you're kind of grandfathered, but if you're not exceeding the new requirements, you're now bound by those new requirements?
So, right, so, I mean, if the new requirements are such that they've satisfied them, then they would simply continue to follow them. One thing to keep in mind, the challenge we have here in terms of grandfathering is we're really talking potentially about the number of animals. And the number of animals goes up and down, as they were describing. And so even if, for example, they were, a set of standards were adopted that perhaps there was, they had one more goose than the new ordinance allowed, that's something where they could drop into compliance with that simply by processing or selling that animal at some point in their compliance, and that legal non-conforming protection would go away, because at that point then they simply are in compliance with the ordinance and they would be required to follow that from then on.
Thank you. Trustee Therian?
Whether we approve or not approve this evening, so let's just say we did approve, and then find out that there's triple of everything. We can, I think I mentioned this a little bit ago, we can then ask the planning commission to look at that for the R1 then, as far as, is that correct?
No matter what we do with this, if we choose and ask the planning commission to look at it, we can do that.
I mean, we could do that. Let's just say a year from now, we find that there's triple of everything and we have complaints. We as a board could ask the planning commission to look at that then, what we're talking about now.
Yes, but in this case, they would be grandfathered in for that triple amount unless they came in compliance and they couldn't go back out of compliance, is what I heard.
Oh.
So they would be, well, that's what you got, and you're non-compliant, legal non-conforming. You're allowed to continue to be legal non-conforming under the new regs unless you become conforming, right?
Correct.
And then now you fall under that having to follow the new R1 in that case. That makes sense to you, Trustee Therian?
If it being a non-conforming,
Because you have triple the amount, let's say they
Yeah.
have 15 geese, okay? And we come up with a new ordinance that says R1 only allows 5 geese. I'm not suggesting that's a good idea, I'm just saying what ifs, right? So we come up with a new ordinance that says R1s can only have 5 geese, then the property in question with 15 geese would be legal non-conforming because they're grandfathered in under the original R1. But if they drop to 5 geese, they've become conforming, and now they can't go back. Did I misstate anything there?
okay.
Does
If
that
they
make
were,
sense?
if they were non-conforming, that would not allow them to really make any improvements to the property without conforming?
That would be a legal non-conforming use. So there would be no real requirements there, would there?
So
Can't make it more non-conforming.
Correct. So they could add a shed though, and not have to go to 5 geese in that case. Would that be accurate?
Well, let's see. There are probably, I don't know, 1 million maybe hypotheticals that we could apply to this. And some are going to benefit one party or the other. Future land use owners, current land use owners, current board of trustees, current planning commission members. If you'd like, Mr. Nanny can try to navigate, and it would only be, I would guess, an approximation of trying to answer all the different what-ifs. And I would not want this board to rely on them to the extent that you are often able to rely on information that's been researched and thought through and documented in these kind of things. So that's all I'm going to say about that, because I can see it. The we're starting to go through all these hypotheticals and to what end do we keep doing that? And I become a little cautious of answering those in such a definitive way because they are getting kind of technical. And what constitutes an increase in the nonconformity and those kinds of things. And so we're happy to provide all that information. I just don't want you to think that you can necessarily take it to the bank.
Appreciate that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think my only point, and I was trying to answer your question, my only point was that if it becomes R1, it then doesn't have any of the, doesn't address any of the concern that I was trying to address. That's all. And it wouldn't necessarily without some major changes. Other comments? This has been a fun one. I struggle with it, and I hate to say fun because I really feel for all the property owners involved. Fun meaning challenging, trying to come up with what I think is fair for all. I enjoy challenges, I guess is what I'm saying. But in any event, I appreciate all the comments from the board members.
Do we have many lots where we have residential, like, houses in industrial areas in the township?
We don't have a lot of industrial areas, period.
Period,
And this
yeah.
is kind of a carryover from Delfield being put there. It's kind of a carryover. And the master plan does, I believe, leave these lower properties as I-1, and then agriculture to the north, because we're trying to preserve agriculture in our master plan. And so this is what all that discussion is these properties that we're looking at here are really transitioned from that I-1 into agriculture. Did that answer your question at all?
Yeah, I was just wondering what the precedent is to have a little residential lot zoned to industrial. Like, what is our precedent for that? Like, is that a common occurrence?
No.
It's left over from a long
Yeah,
time ago.
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
a product of the township being in existence for 100+ years.
Right.
I mean, that right there, for me, the idea that there is a home built there would be my driving force why rezoning makes sense.
We all good? We have a motion on the floor. Would you do roll call of the board, please?
Yep.
Anybody not clear on the motion? Okay, thank you.
Treasurer Rogers,
Yes.
Trustee Brown,
Support.
Trustee Lannon,
Yes.
Trustee Lay,
Yes.
Trustee Thering,
Yes.
Supervisor Monkey,
No,
and Clerk Cody, yes. 6 yes, 1 no.
passes. Thank you, board. I appreciate the good discussion. That moves us to item 11B on the agenda, 2025 Board of Trustees meeting schedule. This is on, thank you all for coming in, by the way. That takes us to page 55, by the way, in your packet. Mr. Stuhldreher, do you have anything you'd like to introduce on this?
I do not, thank you.
We have a proposed schedule in front of us. I have one favor to ask, but I have to admit it's very selfish. So I'm okay if you completely deny it. I won't be offended. December 17th happens to be my anniversary. And that was yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Happy anniversary.
And it's a Wednesday. Our only meeting in December happens to be on that day. And being that our November meeting, 25th, is on a Tuesday, if this board is willing, I would love it if it was December 16th instead of the 17th. But
Well-
I told you, it's completely selfish.
That's my birthday, as long as we have cake. I'm
Oh.
What's your favorite kind of cake?
good. Good question.
Well, I don't want to intrude on your birthday either.
No, yeah, fine.
Well, I'll make a motion. All good? Motion to consider the approval of the proposed Board of the Trustees meeting schedule for the 2025 calendar year in accordance with the Open Meetings Act, and one change in the background information schedule, down here for December 17th, we would like to change that to December 16th, 7 PM.
There isn't a planning commission meeting that day, is there?
Hang on,
Hope not.
I'm looking.
I don't think it is, but
Yes,
Yes,
December 16th, there is.
yes, there is. Good catch. I might have to leave. I'm sorry.
You're not
Can we
feeling
move it
good
to-
on
I'm not feeling it.
December
I'm
15th?
trying, but
Yeah,
is that okay?
absolutely.
Apologize. I
You're
just, I
okay.
can't.
So you're.
No, I appreciate you saying it.
I did
and
that.
taking care of
I
yourself.
feel
Feel better, Lisa?
humbled.
Feel
Um,
better?
I gotta go.
what about Thursday?
Do you need?
Thursday, the 18th?
Yeah.
That's okay with me if that works for everybody. This is not that big a deal.
I can do Thursday, the 18th.
My wife noted this, and I'm like,
I'm good with
You better be
Thursday.
careful.
I know your
On the
wife.
17th.
I can make it Thursday, the 18th, no problem.
there's no conflicts according to the scheduled meetings, so.
I'm a yes for it.
Okay, so motion would be December 18th, 7 PM.
So no cake for me.
Okay,
Okay?
I gotta go, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I hope you feel better.
Yeah,
Yeah,
take care.
that's
I say yes, I'm sorry.
You're voted in.
Yep.
So we have a motion. Did I hear a second or no?
Oh, support.
Motion by Brown, support by Thering. All right, so the motion, I just want to make sure I heard it correctly, was to approve what's there with the exception of moving the December 17th to the 18th, which is a
Yes.
Thursday. And I told you this is purely selfish. Are there any feelings of objection to that? Because I don't want to,
None,
none?
no.
Anniversaries are sacrosanct.
We're just trying to keep you alive.
I appreciate it. And
Happy
it-
anniversary.
Yeah,
It's a
happy
big one
anniversary.
next year, so. In any event, any other discussion on this then?
No.
All in favor of the motion to approve the calendar as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Let the record show that Clerk Cody had to leave at about 8:11, and therefore it was unanimous vote on that of 6-0 instead of 7-0. That moves us on to item 11C. This is consider taking a position regarding the proposed sand gravel mining legislation. Just a quick bit of little history. I know I'm going to ask our manager to jump in here too. But back in 2 boards ago, so this would be 2019, 2020, the township went through a process of updating its extraction ordinance and ultimately passed that, and then later made some modifications to that. This would be in 2020, I think was the new board, maybe even 2021. Made some modifications to that. Actually pretty proud of the work that Township did on that. And I believe it helped protect some of the property owners. It also helped protect the township in the sense that when there's mining, extraction operations, one of the requirements is that we make sure we have methods of remediation if the operation were to go belly up or something, right? That the land gets put back to something usable. In any event, there is some history behind this, and so I think the fact that the state legislature is looking at taking this to state level, in other words, taking away local control, it's kind of near and dear to me because we work so hard on trying to get good local control of something that is good for the community. So that's my introduction. Mr. Stuhldreher, would you like to say something on this?
Often the legislature is introducing bills, passing bills, House and/or Senate. Governor may not sign them. I don't normally pay a lot of attention to those, except when they are more directly affecting townships generally, and then certainly more when they're potentially going to impact Union Township. And when they do, then it occurs to me that this Board of Trustees, which doesn't follow, I don't think the legislature as closely as somebody like I would, because it's not your jobs, I want to give them an opportunity to weigh in, and so this was one of those. And it's primarily, the thing I want the board to recognize is the local control aspect. Whether you're a township or a city or a village. I've worked for local control, local units of government all my life. You all are governing a local unit, so I would imagine local control is important to you. So I wanted to bring this forward. I tried to do it in a manner that is balanced, because I don't really want to take a position on the specific activity in question. I want to highlight that it's it may be, if passed and signed, what I would say is another loss of local control that's been going on for a couple of decades now. We've seen a lot of it in the paper where it relates to short-term rentals. Not as impactful here, but very impactful for some of the more vacation-orientated and tourist-orientated communities. We've seen it more recently in the siting of solar energy facilities. Not too long ago, that was subject to local control, and within the bounds of state legislation that's on the books. That was removed. There are other discussions going on from a land use perspective that get all the way down into how many parking spots should be allowed per person in a apartment building. And so we have this trend of all these things being decided for us by the state. So that was the impetus for bringing it to you. As it relates to sand and gravel extraction, mining, that is real in the township. We have an operation permitted, and to some, I think they have begun to do some, not maybe the mining yet, but the preparation at Lincoln and Millbrook, that kind of corner. We've had other facilities here in the past. I fully understand and support, because we help pay for the roads, that the closer the gravel is, the cheaper the trucking expenses, and theoretically the cheaper the roads. So all those things, are what they are, but of particular note is the local control aspect. I've tried to outline the memo listing both sides of the story, and I'll just turn it back to you to decide whether or not you even want to take a position on it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for saying that. I just wanted to reiterate it again, though. We don't have to take a position on this, right? We can choose to send a communication to our legislature of support or opposition, or choose to do nothing. So with that, I guess, where are the feelings of this board on this? And if someone wants to make a motion, I'm open to that too. Trustee Lannon?
I would make a motion taking a position and communicating same to the state of Michigan elected officials regarding proposed legislation that move the permitting of sand and gravel mining operation from the local unit of government to the, I don't think that's the motion I want to make.
You may want to look at page 59, the bottom of page 59.
Yeah, that sounds like maybe the opposite direction I wanted to go.
You have a choice there. I'm not sure where you're going.
Virtually, I'm saying I'd like to make a motion and to give communications to our state representatives indicating that we would not support losing local control to the state of Michigan regarding sand and gravel / aggregate mining.
I support that.
Motion by Lannon, support by Brown. I appreciate and agree with your motion. Could I ask for clarification on use of state representatives? Who that might be?
So, my understanding, this is a House bill, and so first and foremost, I think we'd be talking to our state rep, Jerry Nyer, but I also would think we'd be talking to our Senate rep, Roger Hauk, and let those folks know, but I'm not sure if
Would you,
it's appropriate for Roger being a House bill.
would you be willing to add to that the governor's office as well?
Absolutely.
Would you be willing to take that as an amendment?
Absolutely.
I like that. Other discussion?
And as far as discussion goes, I really think it's appropriate and paramount to do what we as a board feel is right for our township. And from my personal position, I haven't had a lot of discussion on things that affect our township in a true professional manner with our representatives. You know, I may have personal conversation on the side, but I do think it's important for the board to be in communication with our representatives. And when our representatives hear from their constituents, and especially from a board, speaking as one voice, they listen and they consider what our position is. And so I don't think we should fail to miss opportunities to speak with our legislators that represent us.
Agreed. Now, for clarity, what I heard from you originally was drafted communication, right? Meaning,
Correct.
I was thinking letter in my head, but your comment just now was more in general. Correct?
Yes,
Yeah,
but
okay.
my motion was, yes, to
Thank you.
draft a letter and move it forward as we indicated to our House representative and to the governor's office,
Very good.
supporting not losing local control to the
Yeah.
state.
Opposing what the House is
Opposing
currently,
what
the House
what
is
the
looking
bill
at right
is.
now. Yeah, those three bills.
Yeah.
Other discussion? I'll just comment. I mean, I get why the state is doing it, because there are a lot of communities that are doing their best to just essentially ban through zoning. I mean, I think it's probably illegal to ban, maybe, aggregate mining like that. But you find ways to make it nearly impossible. And that's probably happening in a lot of communities. Nobody wants this by their neighborhoods, right?
Yep.
But in the same sense, if you're a responsible municipality, you're allowing it, but you're having some control over it. So but I get why the state's doing this. They're seeing the need to have these aggregate mines in more places to lower road costs, hopefully.
I would hope they would be very conscious if they did get control, but according to what's presented to us, it's irregardless of zoning.
Right.
That they can not pay attention to the work that our planning commission goes through to establish a very livable community through its zoning efforts.
Right. What's a master plan, right, for?
Right, exactly. So then
They
you look
require
at,
us to have a master plan, but then don't want to look at it.
then you may consider why even have a zoning commission
Right.
and be an unzoned
Right.
community.
Okay, so, just so I understand, we're asking essentially a resolution be drafted so that we can send it off to our representatives and the governor. I'm assuming this board would want to see that come back here, just to final approval. Is that reasonable? Okay. Any other discussion on this?
When is it being, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, you,
When is it being voted on?
There's nothing on the schedule.
Oh, nothing on the schedule yet?
Before
Okay.
the end of the year yet.
Okay.
that, you thinking that's something we need to vote on, or is that something that we could read and just send our approval, or isn't time kind of the essence right now?
There's nothing on the schedule.
I don't know what the legislative calendar is for this item.
Right.
Hang on, I'll look at Legiscan.
And
Pretty handy.
there are a couple ways I think you can execute the intent of the Board of Trustees. If you want to do it via a resolution, then yes, you would need to convene public meeting and vote. The motion was made to communicate. I was thinking, until you mentioned resolution, that that would be in the form of a letter,
That was my original thought as
Right.
well.
and that is appropriate as well. The board voting would be authorizing, I think, the supervisor to draft and sign, and of course, staff would do whatever we need to do to support that. But it would be clear in the letter that this is a Board of Trustee position, and it has to be signed by somebody, so, it'd be signed by the supervisors. And we'd indicate in the letter the date the board instructed the supervisor. If you did that and you're pretty comfortable with what you could imagine the tone and the content of the letter may be, with some trust and understanding, then you don't need to come back.
What was just explained is the procedure that I would have expected. If we
Okay,
can
that's
agree,
good.
if we can agree that
Yep,
communication
let's
through a
do-
letter just
let's do that.
stating our position,
Anybody not comfortable with that?
that'd be fine.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other discussion on this? Anybody not clear on the motion? All in favor of the motion to have the supervisor draft and send a letter to our state representatives and by representatives, I mean both House and Senate, and the governor's office stating opposition to House Bills 4526, 4527, and 4528. Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
That brings us to item 11D on the agenda, 2.4, financial planning and budgeting. Mr. Stuhldreher, would you like to introduce this, please?
There's a report on this item, begins on page 60 of your agenda packet. It's policy number 2.4, titled Financial Planning and Budgeting. This is an annual review of the policy. The review month per the policy review schedule is December. This is December. The policy is not particularly long, so I'll just read it in its entirety. Financial planning for any fiscal year or the remaining part of any fiscal year shall not deviate materially from the board's end priorities, risk fiscal jeopardy, or fail to be derived from a multi-year plan. Further, without limiting the scope of the foregoing by this enumeration, he or she, the manager, shall not, 1, fail to include credible projections of revenue and expenses, separation of capital and operational items, cash flow, and disclosure of planning assumptions. And since we're sort of new to policy governance, all the policies that begin with 2 are limitations on what the administration, limitations on how the administration can go about implementing and effectuating your policies. And so they're often going to be, when written, they will be from a negative perspective. We're not allowed to. We shall not fail to. The second sub-policy, he or she shall not plan the expenditures in any fiscal year of more funds than are conservatively projected to be received in that period. He or she shall not plan for the fund balance to drop below a safety reserve for the following operating expense requirements: less than 4 months for the general fund and the fire fund, and not less than 2 months of expenditures for utility, EDA, and West EDA funds, and shall not provide less for board prerogatives during the year than set forth in the cost of governance policy, which is a different policy within the document. So what's all this mean? What's it mean to me particularly? My interpretation is that the policy indicates that the Board of Trustees seeks to ensure financial stability by requiring the manager to make sure assumptions are reasonable when it comes to revenue and expense projections, that when we are to actively be monitoring and amending the budget as situations on the ground require that may not have been available or known at the time of the adoption of the budget, that the fund balance of the general and the fire fund should not fall at a minimum below the prescribed limits that were mentioned a minute ago, and that the board prerogatives that are set forth in the cost of governance policy, which is 3.10, that there's money for those. And those kind of prerogatives had to do with training, being able to attend the meetings that you're assigned to, those types of things. And then lastly, that is, we budget on an annual basis for the following fiscal year. That appropriation resolution is adopted. We did that this past October. It's applicable to FY25. But while we're constructing and approving the, in this case, FY25 budget, that we need to be paying attention to the long term. Because 1 year in isolation, good or bad or indifferent, is just 1 year in isolation. This township's been around 200 years or whatever the number is. We hope it's going to be around another couple hundred. So we need to have a long-term horizon placed on this at some point. So that's how I interpret the policy. And I believe that's a reasonable policy. Conservative budgeting, without going too overboard, is, I think, the appropriate mindset for local units of government. After all, it's the taxpayers' money. We need to keep an eye on the long term, because while we may have money today, there can be shocks. We may not have money tomorrow, so let's make sure we're at least aware of that. And that we need adequate cash flow, for one, the unanticipated, which by definition we won't know is coming. And that we also need sufficient cash flow or sufficient fund balance to provide the cash flow that's needed during the fiscal year. Our expenses are fairly stable, kind of the same month to month, but our revenue is not. And then lastly, in terms of the justification, and I think this is one of the key pieces, is the more trained and educated the board members are in whatever area of local government and from whatever source, MTA, MML, any other association, that the more informed and in tune you are with how things operate at the local level, the probabilities of you all doing an outstanding job is going to increase. So that's the justification I have. I feel we're in compliance with the policy. Some of the data that I'll just mention that I feel supports we're being in compliance, is that when the current budget was proposed and for 2025, the assumptions were pretty conservative, and you can even see conservative assumptions in the long-term projections that are provided in the budget, in the back of the budget book. So that's another piece of data that informs us from a longer-term perspective that this year's activity can be supported 3, 4, 5 years out. We have monthly cash flow data that we report to you quarterly throughout the year, and fund balance information that's pretty current in the back of your budget book. So we're meeting all the requirements of the policy from a cash flow level perspective, from a being able to fund expenses when we're not collecting property taxes at that time. As it relates to FY 2024, we amended the budget, I want to say 2 or 3 times in the year as needed. If we have an opportunity, we bring it to the board. We let the board know that it's currently not budgeted, and so the action often is to approve the recommendation if you so choose, and if you do, we also speak to a budget amendment component, so we have the appropriations to actually spend the money. I think it was in like May of 2024, we had the audit presentation from our auditors. They were here, and they expressed their highest opinion. I forget what it's called, but we received the highest opinion that the auditors can give, which speaks to, at least from a fiscal reporting and managing perspective, our fiscal jeopardy is limited. We have reasonable risk controls at the operational level. So with that in mind, I believe we are in compliance with the policy. Be happy to answer any questions that you may have on this item.
Trustee Lannon.
Thanks, Mark, for that. And what you laid out makes real good sense to me. You talk about how future years down the road will support, what we budgeted for this year. But I was just curious to the board if our wording is funny or if I'm just missing the point a little bit on the second point, 2.4.2.
Thank you.
Talking about expenditures in any fiscal year of more funds than are conservatively projected to be received in that period. So it takes me to like spending down our budget this year in 2025. And if you look at the bottom line, we're going to be spending more than we're taking in. And that's fine, and that's planned, and that's been approved. But just this board's wording of that particular 2.4.2 seems to me to say that's not a good thing. So I'm just wondering if, for clarification, improvement on the policy, if we should consider some addition, adjustment, deletion, or something to
Mark.
that.
Mark, was this
Point.
policy written by, it wasn't written by us, it was written by the state?
Board of Trustees.
Oh,
Yeah, this is our policy.
I know, I mean,
Yes,
it
but-
governs us, but I thought there was some.
No, we can change this. That's the beauty.
Nice.
I'm sorry, did I
No,
answer
no,
your-
that, yeah, okay.
Trustee Lannon, I'm so glad you brought it up, because I was gonna bring this up. I think we can wait until we get, since you brought it up, we'll talk about it now, but, there's a spot where we talk about potential changes, those kinds of things, but I had the same comments you did. And I thought, wait, we did budget more to, spending more than we have coming in on purpose, because we're
Mhm.
trying to spend down, I don't wanna call it excessive
Right.
cash balance, but, yeah, I mean, especially when that happens, if you have large capital projects that you don't end up doing in one fiscal year, you carry over, you're bound to have that happen.
Right.
So I appreciate the comments. I'm kind of curious, if I may ask our manager, do you interpret the 2.4.2 differently than Trustee Landon just described?
I certainly don't interpret it any different than you just did, which I think is consistent with Mr. Landon.
I go like a rabbit.
What it's saying, taken in isolation,
Yes.
is that any budget where revenues are less than expenditures would not be allowed by 2.4.2, even if you had $100 million fund balance in the savings account. And so I think if you want to do any wording, and I know you're not there yet, but we need to add on to the sentence something about like when also, or after also taking into account existing fund balance.
Yeah.
Something along those lines.
All right, well, let's move through this as we think about this. And we'll come back to it during this section. I want to give a chance to let that gel a little bit. Thank you for your answer. So I'm just going to lift up a little bit more what the manager said. When we read this, this is important. The organization shall not do these things.
Yes, shall not, yeah.
And I'm really trying to paint that's our guardrails that we set out, right?
Right.
And I think what Trustee Landon was saying is we get a guardrail that's maybe too much from what we really want. 'Cause sometimes we want to spend it down. But anyways, so this report was due in December. It's on time, correct?
Yes.
The manager's interpretation, that's important because that's how the manager interprets it, and is he interpreting it the way that we desire our policy to be interpreted? Any issues with that?
No.
So I'm gonna move down. Do you feel the interpretation addressed all aspects of the policy?
Yes.
Yes.
And then compliance, I mean, that's the big one as well. Do you feel that the organization's in compliance with the policy that this board has set?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. I'll make one comment on that, at the areas in need of improvement. Develop a more robust and complete multi-year capital improvement plan. Just quick little bit of history. I'm gonna fudge the years a little bit, but let's say 8 years ago, our enterprise funds, meaning sewer, water, had good capital planning forecasts into the future. Where we didn't have that is on our facilities and the rest of the organization. And so, Mr. Stuhldreher with the organization has been working on getting us to where this board wanted us to be, which is capital planning for all of our major capital assets. And I think that's why you put this here, is it's something we're still working towards. Is that
That's a fair statement.
yeah. So I just kind of wanted to lift that up because that is something we've been trying to work on. But Trustee Landon, is there anything regarding this policy that you worry about that is not clearly addressed?
So, I just jotted down 2.4.2, spending down fund balance. Just that, I think, or it's my thought that we could improve our policies by kind of addressing that. However, there are appropriate times with, due consideration that you are gonna spend more than your revenues, which gets into the spending down fund balance.
I agree wholeheartedly. And I don't have the language in my head unless somebody else does, but I think we should make this clear from my perspective.
We could possibly think about it till we get together in January at Jamison Hall and maybe work on something there.
That's fine with
maybe.
me.
Is a thought.
That's one way to do it. You could have 7 folks try to craft a sentence or two.
Or,
Or you could let the administration take a stab at it and bring that back to the board, and at least you'd have something to start from.
I like that.
Yeah.
Plan B sounds really.
Well, can we have a
Better
vote on
idea.
that?
I think you got a good sense from the board on what we're trying to address here. Correct. Are you okay with,
hey, I think it's spot on.
any objections to looking at that?
No.
No.
Okay.
No.
Anybody else have issues regarding the policy that not clearly addressed or whatever? That was the one I picked out, so I was so excited when you said 2.4.2. Any additional language? The hardest part is always seeing what's not there that we should have. I'm comfortable with what's there, other than maybe augmenting 2.4.2. So if there are no objections, we'll move on.
No objections.
No objection.
New business, item 11E, policy governance 3.0, global governance commitment. Bear with me, I know I read this earlier, but I'm looking at it again. Do you have anything that you want to add to this?
Well, just while you're getting organized, maybe. 3.1, all the policies that have numbers 3 in front of them are policies that apply to the board, either board conduct or board perspective or, you know, those kind of things. So these are opportunities for the board to discuss among yourselves whether you are in compliance with this policy, whereas what we were doing before was the board was looking at whether the administration was in compliance with the policy. And this one only, you know, it's one sentence long. I'll just read it for the board. Policy states that the purpose of the board on behalf of the residents of the Charter Township of Union is to see to it that Union Township, A, achieves appropriate results for appropriate persons at an appropriate cost, and B, avoids unacceptable actions and situations, which gets kind of into when you start articulating your various policies under number 2, to avoid this happening. So I'll turn it back to you.
Thanks. Yeah, so there really is the two sides that we always look at, right? Which is, so we get to do self-evaluation, and I think we should usually give ourselves A's. I'm joking. But this is a very simple policy. It's very high level. I'm not sure it could be a whole lot more high level, but I'll ask those here. Do you have any feelings that we are in not strict compliance with this?
No.
Is there anything that we can improve on, or is there issues that we should learn or discuss with this policy at this time? Trustee Landon.
One thing I noted and tried to demonstrate how we are in compliance with this when you get into avoiding unacceptable actions and situations was just stating, and I stated it before it kind of came to fruition, but was demonstrated by correspondence to state legislatures on our positions and request their support. For example, local control in the sand and gravel bills. So that was, by doing that kind of thing, which we did do, helps reinforce that the board is in strict compliance by trying to stay out of these situations that are maybe unattainable.
Do what we can.
That's for the
right?
community, right?
Yeah.
Try to do what our job is, to look into the future a
Right.
little bit and be out of the weeds, so.
Ready for motion yet?
We don't need a motion on this one.
On 3?
No? Just to review. Any other comments on this? I mean, this is a beginning of section 3. It's 3.0, right? So it is meant as a top level,
Right.
high level. Section 3 is going to describe that we as a board stay out of these bad situations the best we can. So if there's no objections, we'll move on to item 11F. And I think what we just went through to a certain degree is helpful for item 11F. And what's before us is a request to reaffirm the use of our existing governance model, policy governance. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to read it, especially new trustees or
Yep.
board members. It is a framework by which we govern. We know our boundaries. We give boundaries to the administration. We use it for monitoring ourselves and the administration. I think the big question I would be asking if I were you is, why do we want to reaffirm this now? We haven't gone through training on it. We haven't gone through it together as a board and looked at, does it meet what this new board wants as policy and or goals or ends, right? And I think the biggest answer I got from that was, it's for the administration right now, that we still have set borders, guardrails for the administration to work within. And until this board gets a full chance to fully engage in policy governance through training and discussing it together, my thoughts were it makes sense to leave the guardrails in place, and if we want to change them, we can, because policy governance is a living document. Every month we go through the review, we have an opportunity to change it, we can add to it. So that's, I don't know if that makes sense, but I was trying to answer in my own mind, why is it important to affirm this now? And for me, it was more for the organization than anything else. And I guess you could say that we're all agreeing to live by that section 3, which is try to be good trustees of our township. Mr. Stuhldreher, would you like to introduce anything on this?
I do think it's primarily a board discussion. I appreciate the perspective of, we work within a certain framework. It's articulated in this document. I have traditionally brought this question to each of the boards in December following an election. So I think this will be the third time I've done this. And it's a way for the administration to kind of keep on its same path in terms of how we conduct ourselves, how we conduct business. So it has some importance to us administratively. I think it provides real benefit to the Board of Trustees that absent a policy of some sort, if you don't want to use this model, what one do you want to use? And until that's determined, then I would caution against removing what you're currently using, because nature abhors a vacuum.
Right.
And that's what you'd have in the intervening time frame. But it's really up to the board.
So when it says action requested, that's the time for a motion?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
This is, what's suggested is just kind of affirmation that
Right.
this new board is adopting this for now.
I move to reaffirm the use of Union Township's existing governance model known as policy governance and the implementation of same via the Union Township Board Policy Manual.
Support.
Motion by Rogers, support by Brown. Excuse me. When I was first got involved with policy governance, I think this township adopted it back in about 2010. And I was a planning commissioner at the time, and later became a trustee, but I really liked it because it took the power away from the supervisor. That was one thing that I liked about it, I should say. Because the way a lot of municipalities are run, in particular townships, the supervisor, I think, has too much control, and it takes the control away from what I consider more democratic,
Right.
which is this board. we're all one vote of 7. And if it were me, I would want a supervisor in my township to be the rogue animal, right? In the same sense, it also takes away power of all of you to a certain degree, because we don't operate individually, we operate together. So what that means in practice is if Trustee Thering goes into the manager's office and says, I want you to do this, he's gonna look at Trustee Thering and say, if the board tells me to do that, I'll do it. But I don't think that's a good idea for the organization. Until the board tells me to do it, I'm not going to. Is that right?
Right.
I didn't misconstrue that, did I? I didn't mean to put you in a bad light. But it really forces us to operate together. And that's one thing I always liked about the policy governance. Other comments about this?
3 cheers for checks and balances.
Yes. Yes. We have a motion on the floor. No more comments? All in favor of the motion? We actually have this as a resolution, don't we? Is someone willing to be temporary clerk?
I'll do it.
Any objections with that?
Nope.
No?
Support?
Support.
Alright.
Well, I feel a little weird because we have a motion on the floor, and so I didn't want to take another motion, but we do need a clerk to do a resolution. Anybody not clear on the motion?
What makes you think it's a resolution, just out of curiosity?
It says resolution on the bottom.
And it'd be nice to have a roll call vote of this. So if there's no objections
Oh, yeah.
with Trustee Lay as being acting clerk for this motion,
Is there a script I need to follow?
just go through and ask each of us, yea or nay. So
Okay.
any clarification needed on the motion?
Do you want me to read it again?
Sure.
Okay, reaffirm the use of Union Township's existing governance model known as policy governance and the implementation of same via the Union Township Board Policy Manual.
Would you please do a roll call of the board?
Yes, we start with you?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Brown? Trustee
Yes.
Brown? Brown?
Yes.
Trustee Lannon?
Yes.
Treasure.
Treasurer Rogers?
Yes,
I'm not good at this.
you're fine.
Trustee Thering?
Yes.
And yes. Trustee Lay, yes.
Thank you.
I feel so accomplished.
Well done.
Thank you. So, I think you've seen communication from our manager as well, that we'll have some training, right? We talked about that earlier, Jameson Hall. I think there's a boot camp also coming up.
Yes, I believe the in-house training is January 29th, maybe 28th.
It says 29th at 6
29th.
PM.
Yep, okay, so it's 29th, it's not too far away. That'll be a good, I think, foundation meeting to have. I also sent out a save the date for those that want to dive in a little deeper, and I encourage everybody to do that if you have time. I've been to it, it's quite interesting. It's not a large group. Susan Radwin, who will be here on the 29th, also conducts the boot camp. But to save the dates were May 8th and 9th. And those dates are firm. It's going to be in the Ann Arbor area. That is firm. She just doesn't have the exact location yet. So if you want to attend, save your dates now, and then there'll be registration information coming out. Thank you.
You'll notice in our calendar, this is actually related, you'll notice in our calendar, April, we have a joint meeting for our new members. That is a joint meeting of all the boards. All boards are invited. We include, that's right, you came last year. Planning Commission, for example, will give a presentation of what they've done and what they would like to see. It's a great opportunity for us to hear from some invested citizens or residents of our own community. And it's done in April so that as we go into budget season, this board has an opportunity to look at the ends, which is where do we want to take the township? And so I'm sure that's something we'll go through at the end of January in that training. So with that, that brings us to extended public comment. Extended public comment is restricted to 5 minutes regarding any issue. If you choose to address the public, please state your name and address for the record. And we'll open up extended public comment at 9 p.m.
There is no one online.
Let the record show the public has left the building and there is no one connected remotely. So with that, we'll close extended public comment at 9 p.m. Mr. Stuhldreher, item 13 is manager's comments.
Thank you. Just two. We had our annual staff Christmas party this past weekend, Friday night. It was a lot of fun. It was held at the cask room, which is in the township, down on Bluegrass Road. For the new board members, this is a holiday party, if you will, dinner, a little bit of fun. That I pay for. There's no township money being spent on this. We had 32 folks, and it was, I think, it was the 4th year I think we've been doing it, and it continues to be well attended, so folks must like it. I know I do. So I would just want to let you know that it's I don't invite you. I'd like to, but I thought I should address that because you're employees too. But I like to just do it for the employees on occasion because of spousal relationships. We do have Clerk Cody there because Peter. But it's a lot of fun, and want to let you know we had it again this year. And venue's great. It's 2 or 3 years we've had it at the cask room. And Cheryl Hunter was there that night, and so I spoke with her for quite a few minutes. She's thrilled to see us back again. And then my last comment is just simply, we won't be meeting again until, I think, January 8th or so. So I want to wish everybody a happy holiday, Merry Christmas, whatever you celebrate, Happy New Year, and be safe out there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
That brings us, any questions for the manager? Brings us to item 14 on the agenda, final board member comment. Trustee Brown?
Yeah, this is the time of the year. I would like to thank staff, definitely the Union Township staff and everybody that works for Union Township. Personally, just from me, thank you. From my family, thank you. You guys do just an outstanding job. Can't lift it up high enough. Merry Christmas to each and every one of you and your family. We love you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Nice.
Trustee Landon?
Yeah, as Mark had just mentioned about the policy governance boot camp, and Sue Radlin, who was instrumental in helping us draft our policy governance, I was just going to lift up a book that we were all given. And if you notice who the author is in this book, it's Susan Radlin. So if you have a chance to peruse through that at all, it might help give you a base level information into some of her thought process and what we're doing with the policy governance. Again, as I feel as our manager mentioned, that educational training for us as trustees and board members, generally well worth it. I had a conflict with the new officials training in Mount Pleasant, not able to attend that, so I did go yesterday to Frankenmuth and attended the new officials training there. I have information for the library. It was about half of the session was on legislative engagement, which we may not get into that too deep at our level here because, as I said, we have jobs and all that. But good conversation from the legislative folks who are working as lobbyists day in and day out. And then there were breakout sessions in the afternoon that spoke specifically with what our positions are. Great refresher. So I attended that. In conversations with Trustee Thering, and a desire for myself, since I really don't know much about Board of Review, I'm interested in attending a February 19th Board of Review training that the MTA puts on. Just think it'd be great base information for my position here, as well as questions are fielded by the citizens and the voters of the area. It's good to have some knowledge there. Also wanted to mention I anticipate attending and would encourage any or all of you to attend the MTA Annual Conference and Expo that's going to take place the tail end of March, first part of April in Grand Rapids. And wanted to let you know that January 2nd starts registration for that. So I'd probably be asking for some assistance from some help here at the township for myself to get signed up, which would probably take place before the next board meeting. And with that, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, be safe, have fun, hug your family.
Thank you again, everybody, for. This is such an awkward part of the evening for me.
It won't be. Just
I know.
Yeah.
Thanks to all the staff. They're absolutely delightful people to work with. Thank you, Tara, for showing me the ropes. I really appreciate everything that you've done for me over the last month. I'm really looking forward to the next year. I think we have a lot of good work to do. And everyone be safe when you're going home, because it was starting to rain little ice balls when I was coming in. So be safe and go slow. Watch out for deer.
Yeah. Or if you did your pizza auto body, just kidding.
Made a couple
Good
stops down
segue.
there this year already.
I'm very thankful for the staff, that everyone in this, that works in this building, has been very helpful, answered questions. I feel very welcome. And I'm thankful for what I've learned, and I'm looking forward to learn more. And Merry Christmas, and be careful and all that fun stuff, and don't eat too much.
Eat just enough.
Trustee Thering?
I would very much like to thank the manager for putting on a Christmas party for staff. It shows how much he cares, and it's hard enough to do, and then I appreciate the fact that he uses his own funds to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That says a lot about our manager, so thank you very much.
Support that.
And I failed to mention, because you know me, it's easy to go, let's have a party. But if you let me plan it, we're probably not going to have one. And so I need to thank Tara and Amy and Kim Smith for helping make it such a nice evening. Thank you.
Nice.
The night before the party, I saw Tara and Amy at Meyer getting supplies for the party. And I said, "Oh, what are you doing?" They're like, "Christmas party tomorrow." And I'm like, "I haven't got my invite yet."
And you won't.
Yeah. They're like, "We're not going to tell you where it's at."
Appropriate move to adjourn?
But yeah, thank you for doing that for the staff. They certainly deserve it. I'm glad you all had a chance
Yeah.
for fellowship. Just a couple comments. Board review, Trustee Lannon, having gone through that training a bunch, because by law you have to do it every 2 years.
Yeah.
If nothing else, it helps you with the appeal process. So if you have to appeal your taxes, because you understand how the Board of Review works and how that is meant to help our residents and businesses, not just the township, right? But speaking of that, the Board of Review, I should have mentioned this in the board reports. The Board of Review last year held a training for our residents for exactly the same purpose I was just mentioning, which is how do you appeal your assessment of your taxable value? And that we were packed. I bet there were 60 people there. I'm just guessing, I'm off memory, but a lot of people attended. I think a lot of those people that came to the training ended up not going through the appeal process because they learned enough about it that maybe all they needed to do was really just talk to the assessor. But the Board of Review did take a vote at the last meeting to recommend to the Board of Trustees that we provide the support for the training for this coming March, right? Our assessor did say that she'd be willing, to me at least, she'd be willing. So I'm giving you that recommendation from the Board of Review.
And we're already planning to do it.
I kind of figured based on success last year, but reaffirmed by the Board of Review. One other thing that happened that 4 years ago, which I thought was great, was the trustees got a tour of facilities.
That was outstanding.
And I think we ought to try to do that again, especially, one, I'd like to see them again, because it's been 4 years for some of those facilities. But I think for our new members to see some of the assets, and I don't want to spoil it and be with anything, but I think it's worth seeing what's in our township.
For sure.
And so if we're willing to try to do something, that'd be great.
We've had some preliminary discussions on that. We're looking at spring, and just because we thought it might be a little more fun, we were trying to wait until we actually have, there's a lot of things going on with those facilities, with that $11 million grant, at least on the water side.
Right.
That if we're doing the tour while there's some cranes out and some work being done, sometimes it can even be more interesting.
Right.
Perfect.
We will arrange that.
Awesome. And almost last but not least, but not quite, I articulated what I at least struggled with the rezoning request that was passed tonight. And I'm not sure that redefining the R1 zoning a little bit to provide for some of the concerns that I was articulating is the right answer. But I do have interest to finding out if it is. And if there's support to pursue that at all, I'd like to have some discussions in the future on that.
Yes.
Yeah?
Oh, absolutely.
I would support that. I
Yeah,
mean,
for sure.
Yeah.
if it wasn't for Sandy getting up there and speaking and talking about the conversation that happened between the neighbors, I was sitting right alongside you. I'll be honest with you, I don't know why this was one of the, for whatever reason, in my mind, I spent more time thinking about this one. And if it wasn't for what had happened here this evening, I can tell you I was a no. So,
Okay, so I'll work on sometime in the spring or something. I don't think this is urgent, right? But
Right, right.
that we come back at this?
Yeah.
Okay, great. And then now last, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah. I'm so excited.
Feliz
You-
Navidad.
Yeah, I'm so excited you three are here to join the remaining 4 that we have. We'll see you January 8th.
Okay.
Next year.
I know.
Yeah, and so I'm happy to take a motion right now.
Move we
take-
adjourn.
Support.
Yep.
All in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned at 9:14 PM.